So we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. If you're watching live, and if you're watching YouTube or you're watching one of our other channels, then welcome to you as well. Today, I'm with Mike Thompson instead of Dorna, because Dorna is busy doing other amazing things. So Mike, do you want to just say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm a leadership coaching consultant. I'm the president of our North American operation. I've been doing full-time leadership development for about 15 or 16 years now. I've been very, very lucky to have amazing diagnostics throughout the journey. So I'm certified in a number of different assessment tools, and one of the tools that we've picked up along the way is HeartMath and understanding resilience and coherence. And so that'll be one thing that we're going to be exploring today, and I'm excited to discuss it more.
Yeah, and I would say most people know me with the LiveStream Series now, Norris, here in the UK. And Mike really is our resident expert in HeartMath. And it's a subject that he loves. Neuroscience is, I know, really close to his heart. Ha ha, he says. So today we've picked a topic, and the topic is about learning to be coherent in an incoherent world. And when we talk about coherence, we mean something. So we're going to get into what that is. And when we talk about incoherence, we also have a kind of way of describing that. And we're going to start with incoherence. So, Mike, what is incoherence, and the sensitivity and the contagiousness of dysregulation we put? What do we mean when we say that?
Yeah, so I appreciate the second part there. It sounds pretty fancy considering what we're actually talking about, which is losing your cool, right, or having an adult tantrum, or simply not being your best self, right? So sometimes I'll make some jokes about it. Sometimes we refer to being incoherent. They can lead to, or being incoherent can lead to what I refer to as low energy human moments. Okay. So let's maybe identify a couple of different things about what we want as human beings when we think about being professional or being productive in the workplace, right? The brain needs resources. We need strong executive function to hold information, context, processes, and then to be able to hold that information beautifully with our prefrontal cortex and engage with that information in some capacity. And when we're low energy and when we're dysregulated, the brain's ability to contextualize can be compromised, right? So a good example might be you're trying to leave the house and you've misplaced your keys in your wallet. And your brain has sort of two options that it can engage in, right? It can start to frantically search, and you can imagine some of the stress that comes in with that. Or you can stop, you can pause, you can take some breaths, and you can really start to think, where was the last time I left those objects? So one quick comment here on incoherence that I want to make and sort of start us off with is, when it comes to being sensitive to other people, understanding that low energy incoherence can negatively affect people's brains, and that behavior will change dramatically, and what we say and what we do can change dramatically when that ability to stay regulated in good energy dissipates. So for example, this prefrontal cortex is responsible for inhibiting behavior, okay, which means if every time you delegate something to me, I say something under my breath, as a little jab to get back at you for that, my ability to inhibit that function is less than. And so if I'm in that low energy human moment and I'm really incoherent, I may not have that ability to pause that kind of not so desirable behavior. And that compounded across many people, across big organizations, can be extremely contagious because we are not always extending compassion first. And so that's a big component of this conversation as it relates to the sensitivity and this contagiousness, because being in a bad mood is very contagious.
Yeah, and it's so being contagious can mean lots of different things. So I guess one way maybe to say one person triggers, everybody triggers, kind of thing. It's that kind of.
That's a good example. And the energy required. See, what's interesting is that kind of going with the flow of negative energy is also easy to do. Actually saying, I don't agree with that. I'm going to stay back here. I'm not going to lean in. I'm not going to participate. I don't want to react. That's a skill. That's a it's an awareness, I suppose, that you have to choose. So maybe we can just speak to like biologically what we're talking about when we say incoherence, right? In essence, we're learning that the heart is in a powerful bidirectional highway. So when we think of neurological stimuli or electricity that's being exchanged between the heart and the brain, we're learning that there is a huge amount of information that comes from the heart to the brain, and that information, or the quality of that information going from the heart to the brain, can activate learning centers. It can increase our ability to stay regulated and to regulate many, many important systems within the body. And so incoherence, we could simply think of as that exchange of information, the quality of information that's going from our heart to our brain is of low quality and changes the activation of the brain, or changes what systems are regulated within the body. So when we are coherent, when energy exchange or information exchange between the heart and the brain is strong, the body can regulate. It can activate our digestion, our immune system functioning, it can balance our hormones, and all of these are normal regulated systems within the body, but they are all threatened or down-regulated when the presence of stress or chronic incoherence is present.
Yeah. One of the things that is really important to both of us, I know, is that within our leadership development work, showing people and helping people to develop the skills to be coherent is a really important part of what we do. And it's not something that you can do by, going on a weekend away, and that's the end of it. It's something that you have to do over a sustained period of time. And when we talk about leadership practice, part of the practice of leadership that we teach people is the ability to practice coherence. So why don't we get into that? Let's have a look at what we mean by being coherent, and then we can also have a discussion around resilient.
So to understand coherence and how we measure this, let's think in terms of the heart and heart rate. We would say that a good normal resting heart rate, let's say for an average adult, let's say 60 beats per minute, 65 beats per minute, something like that. And depending on, your health and your age and other factors, right, that'll change, right? But when we think in terms of heart rate is simply the total number of times, or even the estimated number of times, that your heart is going to beat in a minute. And of course, if your heart rate is rather low and in a healthy way, then you're not spending much energy. And that's important because we want the body to be able to experience rest, right, where it's not burning calories or as much energy as maybe we need to. There's another measurement inside of heart rate, and we call it heart rate variability. And what this means is that we're zooming in on the information between every single heartbeat. And in essence, because the heart produces an electric signal, we can use a very sensitive sensor to pick up that electric signal. And it starts a stopwatch, and it waits for the next heartbeat, it stops it, and it takes that information and processes it. And so what we're looking for is a sinusoidal pattern in the way that someone's heart rate variability speeds up and then slows down, and speeds up and slows down. And so one of the ways we can very simply visualize this is that as we take in a nice deep breath where we're trying to oxygenate our body, the heart is speeding up momentarily to push out that oxygenated blood around our body. And as we breathe out, the heart does not need to breathe beat as hard because it's waiting for the next breath of oxygenated air to come in. And so recognizing that this intelligence communication, the heart's ability to effectively speed up and slow down and speed up and slow down, and this beautiful sinusoidal pattern that emerges, that's how we measure coherence. That's how we prove that this is a real function, because we can demonstrate it and then we can measure the activity in the brain. So when we say the signals of the heart and how the signals of the heart affect brain activity, we can measure how someone's brain is functioning when there's this beautiful coherent sinusoidal pattern in that person's heart rate variability. And we can also see the brain under duress. And when the heart is experiencing duress, you can imagine that there is no sinusoidal pattern. There's no smooth line. The heart is constantly reacting. And even if you think about like watching your favorite sports team, and it's a close game and, they're down by a point, that may be enjoyment and stimulating and fun for us. We might think about watching that as a form of relaxation, but often it's just another form of being turned on and engaged. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But is it necessarily the same thing as rest? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things for me, and I'm sure it will be true for you, is when I am teaching HeartMath, or when I'm practicing heart-centered breathing in order to kind of become more coherent. When you do that with yourself, with self and with others, one word often comes up, and that word, when people feel more coherent, they say they feel calm. Calmness is a nice word. I like the word calm. It's almost onomatopoeia. It's sort of like when you feel calm. And we sometimes talk about it as feeling coherent, which may be feeling calm in your brain. Your thoughts are kind of just more regulated. Your heart and your body feels more regulated. Your emotions feel regulated. And we sometimes talk about spirit, the spiritually regulated. And what we really mean by that is that we, our value system and our belief system and are kind of in alignment with who we are at that moment in time. One of the things that we also talked about was, the contagiousness of these things. But calm, in my experience, can also be contagious. So because our heart is an electrical device, it's actually radiating a magnetic field. We can, in a state of coherence, radiate calm, or we can radiate irritation, the same kind of thing. Now, this is where it gets a bit freaky for people, because they're like, oh, we're communicating in non-verbal ways through a kind of energetic way of being. And that is true, that we are actually being coherent. And when we become coherent, we are more regulated, and our magnetic field is more regulated.
So maybe I'll give you some context for that. So what Lee is mentioning is HeartMath over the years has done research using a magnetometer, which measures weak electromagnetic fields. And they've been able to use spectral analysis. So they'll do a group of individuals, so one person at a time, experiencing a strong emotion, and they'll measure that individual. And they'll do that 25 different times. And then they'll actually combine all the information through spectral analysis, and they can show you what frustration looks like electromagnetically. Okay. Yeah. And what's interesting is that when you look at what frustration looks like electromagnetically, it looks almost similar to the incoherence of the heart, that there isn't really a, how would we say it? There isn't really a pattern. It's very much chaotic. And interestingly, when we look at appreciation through that same spectral analysis, it not only is a stronger signal, but the signal looks very different, and the signal almost resembles that of this sort of sinusoidal pattern. So it's really quite interesting the way that the heart is really releasing this information. And when it comes to coherence, a couple of years ago, I was at a HeartMath event called Love Unleashed. And Dr. Roland McCready, the head of their research and development, he described coherence the best way I'd ever heard it. And he simply said, we need to start thinking of coherence in terms of it's a state of energy efficiency. And so when we think in terms of why would people want to become coherent, why would they want to build an awareness around coherence? It is simply so that their energy and managing their energy is something that's a function more within them as opposed to something that's outside of them. And again, that ability to discern, am I choosing to spend my energy, or is that other person choosing to spend my energy because they're affecting my emotional state? And maybe that's getting a little bit too far ahead. But again, when we're thinking in terms of resiliency and coherence, it's that ability where we are in a highly energetic, efficient state, and the body loves it. All of nature is extremely energy efficient. Nature does not do anything that is not energy efficient. So the recognition that this is a natural state that our body is used to, that it connects with, but for many people in the busy pattern of life, their nervous system never really gets to hit that state of calm or peace or sustained rest. And that has very unfortunate long-term effects on people.
Yeah. So you mentioned it, and then we've got it in our title. So the word resilient. what do we mean when we talk about resilience in relation to coherence, Mike?
So the HeartMath definition is resilience is the capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. And we can start thinking of resilience as, you fall down, you get back up, you've fallen off the bike or the horse, you get back on. And, it's really that ability to keep moving forward and to do so in a way that's different. Let's say it different. Like when we think about falling down, when we're getting back up, it's with the knowledge often of how did we fall down or what led to that sort of derailment or that challenge. And so that emotional state, let's just imagine something's taken us down. We're not feeling really good, but that emotional state of I can go to resentment and negative energy. These are all the reasons why I was forced down or why I fell down and other people didn't show up and all these other things, right? Versus, I've noticed the pattern that led to this. I'm learning something different about myself and my environment, and I'm going to do something differently about that. And that orientation, that emotional orientation and that mental orientation that we have towards the external environment has a major influence on the way that our nervous system responds. So part of being resilient is that ability to be discerning. There are things that are certainly worth my energy, and there are other things that might not be. And the more discerning and the more cautious I can be or mindful I can be around the things that do cultivate my energy and bring my emotions to the surface and the things that don't. And maybe I'll just quickly mention something there. Displaying emotion is a skill. It's an attribute of emotional intelligence. Just because someone doesn't display emotions readily does not mean that they are experiencing any less of them, right? So people who are calm, cool, collected, that proverbial duck on the water, right? Just because they aren't like me and they wear their heart on their sleeves and they're expressing emotion with every second of the day, it doesn't mean that they aren't experiencing them and have them. And so that's one thing that might be meaningful to mention here. So resilience, HeartMath thinks of it as an inner battery. And the inner battery example, I think, is really meaningful because you can learn to charge your battery. You start to become more familiar with what things, steal that discharge your battery pretty quickly. And you can also actually grow over time, the actual capacity of your battery. And so recognizing that we can have more energy in the future, we can go home with more energy than we currently are. It just means that we might have to make some different decisions. We might have to think a little bit differently. We might have to breathe a little bit differently. And we might have to be mindful of different attributes around our stress.
Yeah. So we know that breathing, well, everybody knows that breathing is good for you, but we know that when you are heart-centered breathing, that it's really good for you, that you can not only enable yourself and your body to activate the heart in a way that makes it become more sinusoidal in terms of the heart rate variability, but just a small amount of practice of that, throughout the day, and interrupting yourself, particularly these days when you're busy in between meetings, that kind of sense of rushed energy that people feel. They wake up in the morning, Mike, who's got a mobile phone next to their bed, they start straight away. And those are the sorts of things that we're trying to interrupt and say, well, maybe we should just kind of not do that first thing in the morning. Maybe we can just take a little bit of time to wake up naturally. And then as the day goes on, in between meetings, even if there isn't much space, just center yourself, just to practice bringing some positive thoughts and some positive feelings into your body in between meetings makes a big difference in terms of what you radiate out into the world, as we were talking about earlier. Again, it sounds strange, but there's a lot of non-verbal kind of energetic communication that goes on between us throughout the day, and we absorb it as well as kind of like giving it out, I suppose. So for me, part of the resilience that you were talking about, just focusing on the preparing for part, which is, we often think of resilience as recovering from, but what we're saying is that resilience is also a practice of preparing for and maintaining a sense of coherence throughout the day.
Yeah, it's almost like making a deposit into a bank account, right? I'm gonna spend a few minutes now connecting with myself, trying to turn down the mental chatter, trying to activate parasympathetic nervous system activity. I really want to give my nervous system an opportunity to catch up. It's been a long day so far. And I think the other component here is that it's so easy today to have a laundry list of excuses, right? So let's just apply some compassion to what you were saying around, waking up, right? Wouldn't it be great if everyone could wake up and do some heart focused breathing? Sure, but not everyone gets to wake up to a quiet house. Not everyone gets to wake up in a place where themselves and their regulation is the number one priority of the environment. And so what this ultimately means is that no one else can do this work for us. We really need to be mindful, and we really need to understand that we are the only person who can navigate our nervous system. And it's similar to the skill of holding and practicing boundaries, but being able to do that for our nervous system and for our body. And that can mean some pretty big decisions, even though they might not be big. Sometimes it's just deciding I don't need to respond to that, or that's not a meeting I need to attend, or maybe I hold some space for myself in this context. And
being okay with sometimes rearranging things so that because when you're incoherent, you kind of know it. But I think what we're saying is today, because the world is so busy, we can spend so much of our time being incoherent throughout the day that we almost don't even recognize that we are, right?
Well,
so it's
what's really fascinating about what you're saying is that if people have never heard of this, they've never seen it, they've never practiced it, it can kind of be a little stressful, because their brain and their body is so wired, it's so organized for being productive, focused on the list, right? So the moment you ask these individuals who are highly productive, highly effective, to slow down, focus on their breath, and try and regulate their system, they get annoyed. It's kind of like, this was not an easy activity for me, because actually being connected to the body means softening some of the things that we're juggling in our brain. And one thing that no one can see, that we have unlimited access to do, is to be busy up here. And so I will sometimes encourage clients, in particular if they have more extroverted energy, more dominance energy, that ability to go, this is a skill. And the skill is actually learning to calm down some of the mental chatter. And what's really meaningful about this skill is that if we practice it often enough, not only do we start to feel the benefits of being coherent, giving the nervous system the time, the energy, the resources that it needs to regulate the body and the systems of the body well, but we also start teaching the body and the nervous system how to listen. Because it turns out that when we're quiet in this state and we're learning to calm down mental chatter, that this is exactly the skill set that leads to really good listening. And again, you only need an ear to hear. Listening is a skill, and it's a skill of valuing what the other person says above what we want to say, and really placing a great degree of value on that, so much that you're not thinking about your response or where you want to go or whether or not that person is wasting your time, right? You're just being present with them. And so being able to be present with ourselves first and actually know what that feels like. And if that's a difficult skill, to say, maybe that's something I want to practice if I really want to start increasing engagement numbers, if I really want to make my or support my people in feeling seen and feeling valued, and allow them to feel really engaged, because that's really the way that the workplace is going today. But that's a different topic.
One of the things that we know, because we're involved with it, is that when people invest in themselves, and that means doing some of the things that we're talking about today, stop worrying so much about what's going on out there, but take a moment to focus on what's actually going on in here for me. And when that's done and invested in leadership development type programs, there's a big return on investment. Very important conversation to have, but maybe one that's not always recognized. So let's look at the last bit of what we wanted to cover today. So we started already on the long-term benefits of coherence. And interestingly, Mike, that ability to listen and to properly listen is a significant benefit of coherence, because when our brains are really busy and everything's all jumbled up in here, our ability to really kind of switch off and create some space for ourselves, but also for other people to be present with them, is a big part of what that means. So I remember when many years ago, when my children were little, I would come home from work and everybody wants a slice of dad and that sort of stuff. And it does take quite a while to kind of just come in and sit down and just kind of allow your body to kind of just turn all the dials down, like a helicopter coming into land. And it takes time to kind of take off again, if you like, but we often don't give ourselves that time. So part of this ability to be present is a significant part of being coherent, and part of being coherent is this ability to slow down and to be quieter in yourself.
Well, what's really interesting is that our modern North America ethos is like, slow down, calm down, like what are you talking? I'm like, ha, yeah. So let's kind of contextualize this. The facts simply are, when we think in terms of what does the research tell us, that our ability to think more effectively, to think more creatively, to engage more collaboratively, right, is a huge ROI. It's an amazing ROI. Okay, yeah. But people do conflict so much better. We do avoidant behavior so well. Okay, like so well. We do avoidant behavior. And so when we think in terms of 80% of stress reactions all fall within an avoidance category, and only the fight component, or acting aggressively to a perceived threat, is actually sort of engaged, or I don't know how to say that. It's aggressive. It's coming towards you as opposed to avoidance. Yeah. So I do want to circle back to contagiousness. And I wanted to make a couple of comments on listening, because I like this topic and I want to get to this topic, but you mentioned a couple of things that I think are meaningful. When we think of being incoherent, being low energy, and being really busy, we often listen with Plinko in mind. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen not the Wheel of Fortune, The Price is Right, but when you put in the little disc and then it hits all the little things in it, and there's little predetermined buckets, like they can only fall in. So listening in the workplace today is kind of like Plinko, where you're going to start a topic, you're going to drop something in, and how it bounces around, but the person listening to you is expecting that what you're saying, or hoping that what you're saying is going to lead to a particular predefined sort of understanding. You're going to do that thing, you're going to follow up with that person, you're going to make sure that that process gets implemented, right? So we're talking about something, and there's always an intention, there's always an expectation, whether conscious or not, and that's what often dysregulates or interrupts good listening. Is that instead of just being present and receptive with wherever the ping-ponging goes and however that lands, because there might be something really important in that information. But if we're busy, if we're behind, if we're waiting for that, what is this leading to? What's the end goal? We're likely in our thoughts and paying attention to our thoughts, and we've stopped contextualizing and paying attention to the other person. So I just wanted to make that, this idea of coherence allows us to listen with receptivity, which is really meaningful, because that also means your brain is able to absorb and contextualize the most. Whereas if I'm busy and I'm just trying to listen for what does this person need from me, and I already have an idea in mind, I might actually start to not be as present, and I might start not contextualize as well. And that can, again, lead to miscommunications, which are much more prevalent than good quality communication, in my opinion. So long-term benefits. The most important thing that happens with this when I'm teaching with clients is I simply try to say a little bit of practice goes a very long way. So do not set the expectation high. Do not think that all of a sudden you're going to start going to 10 minutes of breathing exercises every single day. That's not really what we're trying to do. What we really want to help individuals connect with is, what is the feeling? What is the state of coherence like? Can I experience that? And as a result of the body experiencing coherence more and more and more in an intentional capacity, because we're practicing the tool for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? What starts to happen is your nervous system builds a new appreciation for what that coherence is. And why does your nervous system build this appreciation? Because coherence is a state of energy efficiency, and all living things demand energy efficiency. That's how all things in the world are organized. And I know I'm being very opinionated here, but I would be very interested for someone to find an example out of nature that is clunky and highly inefficient, because I just don't know if it exists. But when the body starts to feel coherence and connects to the coherent state, something else happens. The body naturally has a heightened understanding and less appreciation for the busy energy and the constant go, 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 go mentality, because we're just not as effective and we don't feel as good. And your body actually does want to feel good, right? And in most people, when we're healthy and we're nourished and our needs are met, we just get to wake up. If we're not experiencing chronic pain, we get to just wake up and experience consciousness, you know, and we have very little appreciation for the amount of complex things that go into just being able to wake up and experience Earth. It's pretty incredible. But anyway, I'm getting off.
There we go. Right now, Mike, I think you've demonstrated your enthusiasm for this subject beautifully. We're going to wrap up now because we keep these discussions just to 30 minutes, which is what we've done today. So in September, we will be running a new World Leadership Program, and we run them globally. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do and what New World Leadership is about, including the Coherence Advantage, which is a significant part of it, then please get in touch. And these regular live stream series video podcasts go out every month, along with our newsletter, which will be coming out very soon. And we'd just love to hear from you. Okay, I hope you enjoyed today. Thanks so much, Mike, for talking to us about the Coherence Advantage and what it means to be coherent and to be less incoherent. Yeah, pleasure. Thanks ever so much. Bye, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Take care.